and welcome. This is Rochelle with the Healing Rose. So today I thought, because I've actually had some different messages from people kind of wondering like what my approach to working with this deck is, because I've heard different things about it. So this is an out of print deck. This method is one that I use with I pretty much use this with like every new oracle that I get. Tarot, my approach is a little bit different. So this is the Heart of Fairy Oracle by Brian and Wendy Frood. The backs are lovely. This is one of my favorite decks just for the backs. Like, it's phenomenal. I absolutely love it. So I've heard from a lot of people that they don't actually, this one went out of print because it wasn't popular, because it didn't read as well. And for me, I find actually that it's easier to read than the first Fairy Oracle that was put out. And it was right here. There it is. Okay, so this is the first one, right? The Fairies Oracle. And it actually has a different author. And my main issue with this deck is the font is actually really challenging to read. The H's, the M's, and the N's all look the same. A lot of the letters are just, I mean, some of it is like really, really easy to read, right? And some of it is just like, you know, some of them are a little bit different. There is also like a lot of nudity in this deck, which is, you know, an interesting choice. But I guess, do fairies need clothes? No. Do they need to look like, you know, they're all artistic choices. So this is a nice deck to work with, the Fairies Oracle, which you can still get. It is still available. This has been the one that I'm studying more in depth this month. And I've actually, I'm finding that I really enjoy it for relationship work, actually. It is quite the blunt deck. So it's a beautiful book. It has a lot of like how to use the cards, and they kind of, you know, almost more want you to sit and meditate and get a vibe off the card than actually giving you the stuff, right? But it does give you keywords, and I kind of almost wish the keywords were on the deck, but the font on this deck is so much improved. So I find I like to work with them, pairing them up. So this does have my favorite spread of all time in the back of this book. The end is the beginning. This is my probably the spread I use the most in readings, because it really kind of takes you through very clearly like where things are, what's happening in your situation, and what it is that you need to work on to resolve it. Because ultimately it's like, I feel like things aren't about things happening to you, but about things happening for you, and you figuring out why they're happening so that you can shift things energetically to bring yourself forward. So I love this spread. So what I do when I get a new deck is I definitely now, I didn't used to do this always, but I always look at the spread and I work with the spread for about a month to see if I like it or not. If it resonates with me and the way I like to read, or if it's just bleh. So the cards, it gives you a lot about like the Queen of the Golden Bow and what she does and this and that, but it doesn't actually say this card means this in your reading, right? So it's very vague, which I think is part of what troubled people. Okay, so this is how I work with this deck. All right, so if I want to look at something to do with a relationship, right? And you're looking at the energy of how this person is with your energy, I like to draw two cards. So, you know, just a random whoever example. So we'll take two cards. All right. So if you're looking at how this person's energy is with yours, and if that's what kind of a fit that's going to be for you moving forward, right? And then let's take a look at what it gives us in the book. And it doesn't give us a lot, so it gives us some keywords. So there's a resolution of opposites, intuitive decision, but a tricky situation. Okay, and then it gives you a bunch of stuff about paradox. So let's look at that, right? So a resolution of opposites, intuitive decision, tricky situation, and the leaving is about moving forward, order, and direction. Okay, so how do you work with that then, right? It seems like it's pretty vague. So for me, I go, okay, so if somebody's coming in and I'm debating working with them, I'm debating, going into a partnership with them through a business thing. To me, it would be when I see resolution of opposites and an intuitive decision. So to me, it's like someone whose skills might complement my own, because we're moving forward in order. We're creating order and moving in a good direction. So they might be someone who's quite opposite to me, but they make up for my skills. Where I lack something, they have something, right? So I work mostly with the keywords, and I have indeed read the description of every single fairy that's in here, but I like just going off the keywords and what do the keywords spark intuitively for me, right? It's not about like memorizing the book, because I certainly haven't. This is a deck that I only work with certain times a year, so I always kind of need a refresher, right? So I spend a month working with it, and it comes out in a really succinct way. All right, so let's try another example. And that's so interesting they're coming out in order, because they're in no way in order in the deck. They've been shuffled and shuffled so many times. And this deck shuffles beautifully. I don't even remember who published it. Does it tell me the publisher? It must. Somewhere in here, I think it actually says, because it came in a box set. An Imaginosis book from Abrams, New York. Okay. So I would love to see this deck republished, and I would buy myself 2 more copies of it to have on hand. I actually love this deck that much. And I know it might seem like, it's maybe almost not fair to be like, look at this amazing deck, and you can't just necessarily go out and buy it. But people, I see all the time people are getting rid of it. Okay, so we have the Maiden. So the Maiden is about innocence. It's that first love. And what's our next card? The Speaker of Truth. Okay, so that card I feel is quite straightforward, but let's just take a look. Trust, acceptance, and an open heart, right? So when you meet someone and you're like, oh, okay, like, let's see what the cards say, and you get a combination like this, to me, that's like, that says like, this is somebody who's going to come with a very open heart, and is very, very willing, and they're in a place where they're ready to step into a relationship, right? This is somebody who's absolutely ready to experience that first love. And so that's a beautiful way to step into a relationship, right? And it's an interesting way. I don't even remember how this kind of first happened, where these readings like this started popping out, where I started just doing like 2 cards, where somebody could be like, okay, so I've connected with this person and things are going like this, and now I kind of want to know where I stand and what's going on. And I don't really read for how that other person is feeling, more how they are affecting your energy, right? Because I never feel like I can actually read for someone who isn't there to say they want a reading. It's kind of an ethical thing, I think. But okay, so let's look at the spread that's in the book. Let's actually get in depth. So, if you've watched readings on my channel, you know this spread. And I will just walk through what it says in the book, because I already kind of really, I've used this for, at this point, years and years and years and years. Probably 15 years I've been reading with this spread. So I kind of just sort of, just sort of wing it, but let's go. So the end is the beginning. All right. So this takes us on a journey through Faerie. And so our first card is the beginning of the journey. This is where you ask your question or state your intent. This is where you are at the moment that you begin. How do you feel? What influences surround you at this time? And that's what our first card is. So let's look at this. And I use this spread all the time for tarot. I love it. Okay, so the song. Now, this deck is, so this is one of the things I do when I'm learning. I go, okay, so I have this spread written down. I've written the spread down, and then I'll pull up the card, and then I will write down the number, the name of the card, and all the keywords in my notebook. And my notebook is a scribbly mess, and it's got side notes and layers, and I might have written something 5 years ago, and I go in and I pull it out, and I'll read this, and I go, oh, hang on, that makes me think of this, and I'll go back into my notebook and write new notes in, right? So when I have a deck that I'm working with for years, I do constantly reference back to my big notebook. And, I'm always, I like to write the card in a little bit, and I leave a page because I know I'm going to come back and eventually fill up that page, right? So each card in the deck has its own page, and I write little tiny notes. And my book is a fairly large book as well. So actually, let me just grab the book. All right, so here's just a sample page. So this is a new book, and I'm working through with a specific deck. So I have my notes. This is from a tarot deck that I am actually, my other book was filled up, so I'm just starting this. So I've gone through and I've taken each card and I've done half a page, and then notes, and I have space for notes, but I also leave myself a margin because eventually this whole section will get filled in with little keywords and things that pop up the more that I work with the deck. So I've done that for the entire deck, all the majors, but then I do the sevens for each one, and then I leave myself a big gap for notes. And then I do all the eights together. And I do, so as opposed to doing a page for each, like 7 of Wands and then 8 of Wands, right? So I like to group them. I like this way of doing it. Layouts that I want to actually work with as things come through, right? So I have different layouts for partner work, for love readings that I've come across, and I'm like, ooh, actually, I kind of like this one. I think I might work with, I like simple layouts. So that's just one way that I work. And this is the new book. I'm not sure what I've done with the old one, right? But it's a big book, so it will fill up fairly quickly because there's a lot of note taking to do, right? So I have my other little notebook. It's in my bag that's out in the truck, so I'm not going out into the snow to get it. All right, so card 59. So attentive awareness, hidden energy, listen with your heart. Okay, and without even reading all of this stuff, just looking at what those keywords spark for you, right? So what is the song? So you need to listen, you need to tune inwards and figure out what energy is being hidden from you, right? Whatever the question might be at the moment. Okay, so this second card, according to the description in the back, so this is like our first challenge. Okay, so this is the first obstacle or helper. What do you need to do, change, consider, or leave behind before you can continue? This is the card that asks you to consider where you have been before continuing, which I think is a really interesting from an energetic viewpoint, right? This is where we can start to use a deck like this or a spread like this to begin to get into shadow work, right? Because we can start to really question, okay, like, where are you? How do you feel? And what do you need to change? What do you need to look at? This is something about you. It's not even necessarily something that, physically or in reality that you actually need to do. It's just, where are you? Okay, so oh no seems like it's a pretty obvious card, right? Let's just check the keywords. Just one of those days, obstructions, the unexpected, right? So this is when you have a day and everything's kind of going wrong. And, you know, like you burn your toast, you slip on the sidewalk, you've misplaced your keys, now you're late for work, there's an accident in traffic on the way to work. Like, it's one of those days. But what is it that you need to look at? What is it that you can change? What can you do about that? You know, what should you consider before you move forward, right? And this is just kind of saying like, okay, so it is one of those days. What's your perspective on how you react and deal with that day, right? Because days like that happen to all of us, right? Things go sideways all the time. Okay, so the next card in the spread actually has the most written about it. This is the card at the top of the spread and oversees the rest of the cards. This card influences how you look at the rest of the journey. It colors your interpretations of the cards behind it and before it. It also is on a straight line to the two cards beneath. The central card is the heart. The card below that is the way back out into the mortal world. You can, at this point, take the straight path down the center to the heart and out, or you can, and this in most cases is the wisest choice, to take the path that circles through the next two cards, numbers 4 and 5, to reach the heart of the journey, gathering more information and insight on the way. If you decide to take the straight path down the center, and then turn the central card and the next last card to finish your reading. Okay, so I think that's an interesting perspective, right? If you feel like, okay, this is your obstacle, all right, here's our influence, the Lady of Sorrows. So what does the Lady of Sorrows tell us about what's influencing us? Okay, lack of forgiveness, barriers, and letting go. So the Lady of Sorrows is someone who is holding on to past hurts, things that happened, all the ghosts of the past cling on to her, right? She wears her sorrow like a cloak, and that is the face she puts out into the world. And this is just my intuitive hit off this card, like not reading at all from the actual book of what it says about her. But when I look at this, I see these ghosts of the past are holding on to her, and she is wrapped so tightly in this cloak of sorrow that she can't see anything else, right? So that's a really interesting influence card. And that's influencing how you're dealing with when things go wrong in your day, right? That's shaping how you deal with everything that moves forward. So to me, I find even just these 3 cards has given us so much information. This is why I love this spread. Okay, so card number 4. This card may be a challenge. It may tell you of things that you will meet that need attention as you journey. These things may block your progress towards the heart of your quest. Take time to consider what this card is asking you to do. Okay, so we have number 51, In Two Minds. So, I mean, and again, what I like about this is it's actually quite obvious. I don't even feel like we need to look it up. But here's our keywords: internal dialogue, decision, and action. So it's that should I, shouldn't I, that indecision, right? And if this past grief, past wrongs are coloring your ability to make a decision and move forward, right? It's like, are you stuck in a place where you're feeling like, okay, because we're looking at what are hidden. Remember, we have the song here, and the song is like, okay, so what's hidden, right? What is it that we need to uncover? This is, developing that attentive awareness and listening to your heart. And if you're caught in this web of sorrow, how can you ever make a clear decision? Should you or shouldn't you? I don't know what feels good moving forward. I don't know, because I'm still greatly affected by the sorrow that I carry from what has happened before. And it is affecting how I deal with the little things that go wrong in everyday life, right? Because the little things, they're just, they don't mean anything, but they can cause us to go so over the edge when they happen, right? if we're coming from this place of, you know, everything's awful. All right. So card number 5, this is actually really interesting. I'm going to pay attention to what I'm getting out of this reading. There might be something I need to look at there. Okay, so card number 5. This is the last card before you reach the center. It may help you to explain what the 4th card before was asking you. It might be another challenge before you can reach the heart itself. It may just be an encouragement. Okay, so the Queen of Hearth of Home. I love this card. I really identify with this card. This card really speaks to me on a lot of levels. It might be, you know, it's not maybe the most decorative one in the whole deck, but let me give you your keywords here. So the Queen of Hearth and Home, welcome, courtesy, and graciousness. And so the essence there is that, you know, it always makes me think actually of the Viking, you know, kind of rule about courtesy, right? Like when you've invited someone in, right? Like they're a guest, you treat them as a guest. Like even if it's somebody who's going to be like your greatest enemy, you've given them, like you've invited them in, and now you have to, or risk being punished by the gods, treat them as an honored guest, right? It's like there's so many stories about, you know, such and such, so-and-so's wife invited someone in and invited them as a guest, and they're like, how could you do that? This is my sworn enemy. I must slay them. But now I need to be a good host because I don't want to risk the wrath of the gods, right? So the Queen of Hearth and Home is really looking about that, you know, how do you treat others? How do you feel at home when you go out into the world? You know, it's about your comfort level. Do you feel as if you can be like to be at home in any situation? Okay, so this is you know, which doesn't really give you that, like our keywords. What were they? Welcome, courtesy, and graciousness. Okay, so it's not about just being welcoming to others, but welcoming others in as well, like no matter where you are. So if you're out in the world, you know, being at home, making others feel at home, about feeling safe and secure in who you are, as opposed to being in this place of things always go wrong and holding on to past hurts, being in a, you know, shifting and allowing yourself to be in that place where you can make others feel welcome, be at home and be relaxed out in whatever setting you're in, because you have that sense of safety and security, which is very challenging in the world that we live in right now, right? But kind of an interesting thing. So how does that actually, you know, affect this being in two minds, right? It's like this does your indecision stem from, you know, not feeling or wondering if you're going to feel secure or okay with the decision that you made, right? And if you allow yourself to be in a place where you choose to embrace that concept of actually, you know, stepping out into the world and going, okay, I can be at home wherever I am, right? I can carry that feeling of hearth and home with me wherever I go, that sense of security, right? How do we create that for ourselves? Okay, so, I mean, there's a lot of layers that you can unpack just with keywords, right? You don't always need to, and I think that was the main issue most people had with this book, especially from what I've read, from what people have commented, is that the readings the readings just kind of didn't make sense, or it was hard to work with, or they didn't understand what the cards were supposed to mean, or it just wasn't as good of an oracle as the other one, whereas the other one has, here's your starter reading meaning, and here's your reversed meaning. This book doesn't spoon feed it to you, right? It makes you kind of like tune into your intuition. Where's your intuition going? Okay, so the heart of the reading, which, wow, actually really makes sense with the other cards. So we have the shadow of the past. Let's look to see what our keywords are. Because, I mean, this to me is very clear. I feel like the shadow of the past doesn't even need keywords, but past love, letting go, resolution. So, when we look at this, okay, the Lady of Sorrows being there really starts to make sense when we see that this is the heart of the journey. Of course, that love lost, that loss of love, the grief that we're holding on to, wondering if we've made the right decision, really not like enjoying our days, feeling like everything's going wrong. How do we get back to that place of feeling at home, feeling content, feeling secure when we're clinging on to the shadow of the past for what's gone on? You know, what do we need to do? Well, we need to let go. What's past is past, and we can't bring anything new and beautiful in until we let go of that past and let go of that past hurt. Because when this is all that we are holding in our heart, we do not have the space to let something new in. And this to me is saying, like, you're absolutely ready to bring something new in. So being able to let go is at the key here. This is what was hidden from us. Okay. So our last card is, when you have considered the central card, turn over and look at the last one. This card tells you what you need to take back into the world with you as you leave Faerie. You have journeyed to the very heart of the realm, the very heart of your quest. You have learned what you need to leave behind, to take with you, consider, and finally what awaits you. Take this knowledge, consider how the last card affects it. What is the last gift that Faerie gives you before you leave? What does it give you to take away and use in your day-to-day life? Okay, so let's see. What does that say? Our last card. All right, the Lady of Joy, which is beautiful. And it goes down here, but I think for my camera angle, it cuts off part of the card. So I'm just going to move it up a little bit. All right, so if we're able to, you know, get past this influence of this past hurt that's going on, right? This love lost, and we can start to step out of the shadow of the past. What are we moving into? We have the Lady of Joy. I think that in and of itself is clear enough, but because I've been doing it all along, I'm going to give you the keywords. Joy in the moment, sharing, and a true gift. And the first word here, the first sentence here, to choose the Lady of Joy is to receive a true gift for yourself. All right, she comes to remind you that joy can be found everywhere at any moment. It has no size limits, no sell-by dates, no conditions attached. It just is. So accept this gift. Find joy in the moment and pass it on. Joy multiplies when you share it with others. It is infinitely large, so if you give some away, you will always have more than enough for yourself. All right, so by finding joy in the everyday, you help to make the veil between the worlds thinner and the probability of Faerie contact more likely. Do your duty for the cause of interworld communications and be joyful. So it's, you know, it has cute little messages, right? But essentially, you know, this is saying, okay, so we've looked at what it was that was hiding inside of us, right? What is it that's been affecting things around us? Okay, causing you to be frustrated with all these little things going wrong every day, right? All these little irritations, right? Being irritated by little things that should not even affect you. It's like, oh, all right, well, you know, what's 5 minutes? 5 minutes is nothing, right? Time is a construct. We shouldn't be bound quite so tightly and so stressed about being where we need to be, because at the end of the day, does it make a difference? You know, most of the time, absolutely not, but we get so caught up in things, right? So, you know, being indecisive, not knowing, not being able to trust yourself, not being able to trust that you'll make the right decision because you've been thinking like, maybe I made the wrong decision in how things went. Maybe I made bad choices here and it ended badly for me. And so we're stuck in that. But in order to move forward, we really need to release whatever the past is so that you can step into this space of joy, right? And it takes nothing for us to be just a little bit more kinder, take a moment to give someone a bit of positivity, to compliment someone, to say something kind to someone, because, often it can be one little thing that you say, and it absolutely was something that that person needed to make their day a better day, right? Or to make their week. We don't know what everyone else around us is always struggling with at any given time. And so I think this card is a beautiful message to take away from this reading. Really interesting reading that came out today. But that's one of the things I love about this deck, right? And it's one of the things I love about this spread. So we can really use this spread for just about any card that comes up, right? Like I could do the same thing with like my Moonology manifestation, or I could use it, with a tarot deck. I very often I use this spread most of the time with my tarot deck. Or one of them. Anyways, several of them. Who am I kidding? This is one of my favorite spreads because it gives us so much information, and it's only 7 cards, right? There's a lot of spreads out there like the Celtic Cross or its variations that are 11 cards. We've got spreads that use like, half a deck, 36 cards. Like, we can go crazy, but we can get so much information from a very simple spread. So I hope that you enjoyed this little look at the way that I do my practice. And of course, then I'm going to write down what all of these cards were and make myself note of them and the keywords and my thoughts leaving it, right? I mean, really, my thoughts here are like, I need to forgive what went on in the past. And as I move forward, just, even if I'm having an irritated day, it takes no effort for me to smile at someone and say thank you. It takes no effort for me, to have, if someone opens the door for me and I'm irritated and I'm frustrated and I'm late to get to where I'm going and I've got my arms full of bags, to, pause to say, thank you, have a wonderful day, or, just to say bless you to someone. Like, it takes nothing to be kind, right? And a reminder for myself, to try to relax more and to allow myself to feel at home in new situations, to allow myself to not get caught up in the stress and anxiety of being in a new situation and wondering how things might play out, and, to just really, to just really let myself, embrace that energy of, if I was to sit down, it always makes me think of that, oh my gosh, that, there was a show when I was very small, and there was a man who was a giant, and he would set up little chairs by the hearth, little tiny miniature chairs, and he'd pull them up to the fireplace and then sit down and tell a story, right? So he invited you to sit at his hearth and listen to his story, right? So it's that kind of energy. It's like where if you were inviting friends over to sit and, be comfortable and share, uplifting and fun stories with each other and talk about your adventures and talk about the great things that happened to you and just spend time together connecting and sharing, sharing a happy moment. So that's this energy this is really giving me, right? Remember to just be positive, share, be warm to other people, and just do little things to bring people joy. All right. So yeah, so that's my, well, I have it on video, so I don't even need to save these to write them down. I'll take a look at the video. But this is how I go through the deck, right? This is how I sit and I do readings with a new deck or a deck that I'm studying. So I like to use the spread that the author provides for the deck. If they do, if they don't, I go back to a favorite like this one and spend my time. And then I like to do the 2 cards and see how do 2 cards relate to each other, right? The heartless love and the child. Why would we be heartless? And can we get back to that place of joy, of just everything being new and wonderful and joyous instead of being jaded and awful? So it's to me, it's about learning to just combine two random cards, right? How can we work on the shadow of the past, right? How can we forge ahead and let go? So as you go through and take a deck, it's nice to just pull two cards and look up the two cards, and then try to weave together how it is that they're relating to each other. I think for me that actually has really helped me to learn a lot of decks, doing that little method, because it's so interesting that I actually have a deck I've worked with for years and years and years. And then there's certain cards that if you're just shuffling all the time will never come out. So it's nice to sit and take the time and go through and go, okay, I have this card, I have that card, right? And go and read up on it and take your notes, because I had that happen the other day. I had a card come out of my deck that has never come out in a reading in 2 years. Right? 2 years of working with it and reading for other people all the time. And this card finally popped out, and it's the extra card in the deck. And then it came out for 3 different people, which is really far out to me, right? Like that everybody's kind of being in that same space. But the odds of that happening are pretty rare. But if I hadn't studied the deck first, I would never know what it was that card actually represented. And then I might be really stuck doing my reading, right? Which would be, really super awkward when, you're someone that reads for people professionally. So it's really important, I think, to take that time to study. I know a lot of people just read intuitively, but that doesn't always work with every deck that you get, because, sometimes the title doesn't really tell you a whole lot. There's definitely decks like that out there. You'll get a title and it doesn't tell you a lot. Or, like with there's a couple other decks where they only have numbers. There's no names, and the images are all fractal art. So intuitively, what are you going to get from that fractal art? You might be one of those people that tunes into the ether and gets a lot. But you might be someone whose intuitive skills aren't too finely honed. So you need to sit with the book and you need to go through the deck and learn the deck and, learn the concepts behind each card if you're going to use it really effectively. Anyways, so I hope you enjoyed this little look at the Heart of Faerie. I know it's not a deck that a lot of people work with, but it is one that I have truly enjoyed working with over the years, and every time I sit down and spend a dedicated time with it, it actually gets better and better. And I think if it wasn't out of print and I had another copy, this would be one of my main reading decks, I think. But just because it's out of print, it does stay home, and I will sometimes use it if I'm doing online readings, but certainly not in-person readings. I don't like to take it out of my house anymore because I love it so much. So that's a bit of a challenge there. So I hope this has given you some insight into ways that you can, some tools you can take away as you actually begin to progress with your study through the different decks. And, absolutely, if you've stuck around this long, thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions, or you want to look at examining a study on a specific deck, and I happen to have it in my collection, I'm more than happy to do some videos on that and maybe give you some assistance in figuring out the best way for you to connect with or work with that deck, right? Because it's not always as simple as like, I'm going to hold the deck and now I'm going to just, put my energy in there and my deck is cleansed and now I can just like flop a card out and open up the book and be like, oh, that's what that is. Okay, not all decks are easy, right? Some decks are definitely easier than others, but some take more time and study. So, all right. So indeed, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you so much for being here. I absolutely appreciate you. It's always wonderful just to connect with everybody in the community online and kind of figure out where everybody else is at in their journey and learn from each other. It's always amazing. So, if you have any questions, let me know. Hit that thumbs up button. If you haven't already, I would love if you subscribe. And whatever else is going on, I hope that you have a really wonderful day and that you have some of those little moments of joy that you can take with you. Take care.